In the opening scene of the movie, we see a mentally ill woman who has been released from the hospital. Her problem is that she tries to harm herself every time she goes back to her parents' house. She finds a job as a secretary with a reputable lawyer and signs up for an interview with them. When she gets to the office, no one seems to be paying attention to her. She goes inside and meets a lawyer named Edward Gray. He behaves strangely and tells her that the work will be boring. Primary duty is to write to potential clients. He even asks her to make herself a cup of tea, which she can handle. She eventually gets a job in the first working days, but she doesn't succeed and occasionally has nervous breakdowns. One day she meets a former classmate and they start talking about everything. Mr. Gray, who happened to be nearby, notices and treats her harshly, pointing out her mistakes. Because of the pressure, eventually, Mr. Gray can no longer take it and invites her into his office, where he makes her read her own mistakes. Before slapping her in the ass, she is shocked, but he makes her read on almost immediately. On every word hits her again, and she doesn't say anything because she likes it. The next day, he orders her to keep working, and she makes mistakes in the text. Once more he made her wear a saddle and makes her walk like a dog. In the evening, she reads a magazine article about how to seduce a guy. She fell asleep, thinking about him, and dreamed about them making love. The following day, she makes a purposeful mistake in a text message. She tries to hint at him about her desires, but he is all business. She leaves work and goes to the hospital to see her father, who has passed away. She goes to Mr. Gray's house in sadness, hoping to find solace. Mr. Gray does not understand what she wants from him, so he bids her farewell. Mr. Gray stopped doing this with her and threw away all the red markers that he used to point out her mistakes. She tried to seduce him in different ways, but he ignored her for reason unknown. She then decided to make herself feel better and started slapping herself on the ass. But she didn't get the pleasure she had with him, but Mr. Gray hasn't become cold toward her. Instead, he is just trying to repress all of his desires. She then decided to repeat everything with her former classmate, but he was too soft, so she put a big worm in his letter, which irritated him. He then invited her to his office, where she bent down and waited for her punishment, which was to remove her skirt and underwear. This time he handles everything himself. When she is finished, he tells her to bring a sandwich and fill out the paperwork. She left. He gathers all of her mistranslated letters and photos and burns them in the backyard. The following day he invites her to his office and asks her questions from the interview. He says, "This can go on like this," and fires her by picking at her mistakes. She says she wants to get to know him better. He tells her that he hired her because of his fantasies. After that, he tells her to leave. She packs up and heads outside. She goes home and begins to cry. She pretended to go to work and didn't tell anyone that she was fired. However, she stood aside when she saw a new secretary arrive at work. She gives up and tried to find a new boyfriend with the same hobbies. She eventually gets engaged with her former classmate. On the wedding day, she runs to Mr. Gray and confesses her love to him. He doesn't believe her, so she tries again. This time he orders her to put her hands on the table and tells her to wait for him until he returns. She do, as she was told later. It is already dark outside, and she is still waiting for him. He watches her and makes sure she follows his instructions. The phone rings, and she answers it with her mouth. He realizes that she will do, as he says a short while later her fiancé enters the office and asks what she is doing. He tries to move her, but she hits him, puts her hands down, and declares that she doesn't want to see him. A few days go by, and she is still waiting for him. She ignores requests from numerous people to leave Gray. Returns to the office, where a lot of people and police are present, realizing that she is worthy of him. He offers her water and leads her to the bedroom so they can do something together. Eventually they got married and carried out their dirty deeds. Please subscribe for more movie